So what actually happens when the government doesn't just, ask, but actively pressures private companies to control the information you see, chilling free speech from social media all the way to online bookstores?
That's exactly the question, and it's a big one we're diving into today. We've got this huge collection of internal source documents. You've probably heard of them, the Facebook files, YouTube files, Amazon files.
Right.
And what they show is this sustained, pretty aggressive campaign by the Biden administration, really pushing major tech platforms to change how they moderate content.
Okay, so our mission here is to really break down the specifics. We want to look at the methods they use, the threats, the actual demands documented in emails, and, well, the level of compliance that followed, which seems, frankly, kind of astonishing.
It really sets up this core conflict, doesn't it? You've got the government saying, we need to combat misinformation on one hand,
And on the other.
the First Amendment, fundamental rights protecting free expression, even when it's speech the government doesn't like or finds politically inconvenient, even on private platforms.
And the timeline is key here, you mentioned. This wasn't a slow burn.
No, not at all. It kicked off almost right away. We're talking early days of the administration, February, March 2021. And the internal messages, they show federal officials, names like White House Digital Director Rob Flaherty, Senior Advisor Andy Slavitt, engaging in what the sources call jawboning.
Jawboning. That sounds intense.
It is. It means aggressively using the government's weight, its power, to pressure these companies into censoring speech the administration didn't favor.
And you said aggressive. We talking strongly worded emails or?
Oh, much more than that. Officials expressing, outright outrage if content wasn't taken down fast enough and making these, well, vague but pretty specific threats.
Like what?
Things about enforcement actions, maybe revisiting Section 230 immunity. They actually warned Facebook, and this is a quote, that the last time the company did this dance, it ended in an insurrection.
Wow. So directly linking Facebook's cooperation or lack of it to, well, major political events.
Exactly. And it wasn't just, political posts either. The pressure campaign targeted all sorts of things, humorous memes, comments, even books. It forced Amazon, Facebook, YouTube to scramble, rush through policy changes that ended up restricting speech that didn't even violate their own rules sometimes.
So the sources are saying this was coercion, plain and simple, not some kind of backroom conspiracy between government and tech.
That's the finding, yes. Coercion. The companies cooperated because they felt pressured, threatened by the administrative state.
And the stakes here, when you step back, they feel huge. It's about whether government agencies can just quietly chip away at constitutional protections, all under the banner of, what, public safety.
Yeah, or public health. It's the government trying to shape the online world into its own conception of speech nirvana, as one source put it. A very concerning precedent.
Okay, let's dig into the Facebook files first. This is where we see some really explicit examples of that leverage.
Absolutely. Facebook felt the heat almost immediately. The documents talk about very tense conversations with the new administration right from the start, and it led them to, well, preemptively ramp up censorship.
Like the lab leak theory. That's a prime example, isn't it?
It really is. Facebook suppressed talk about the SARS-CoV-2 lab leak theory early on. We all know how that story developed later. Mark Zuckerberg himself eventually admitted suppressing it was ultimately a bad outcome. He basically said they compromised their standards because of that pressure.
But the pressure didn't let up.
Not at all. It was relentless. Rob Flaherty, the White House digital director, he was actively monitoring their data on content removal. And he got impatient. There's a quote where he says, "I don't want to feel like I'm going to a dog and pony show. My dream is for FB to play ball."
Play ball, so comply.
Right. And his demands weren't just general take down misinformation. They were politically targeted, very specific.
Targeted how?
The documents show Flaherty actually questioning Facebook about why they allowed posts from specific conservative commentators like Tucker Carlson and Tomi Lahren.
Seriously, naming names.
Naming names. And suggesting Facebook should actually change its algorithm. He proposed prioritizing sources like, quote, NYT, WSJ, any authoritative news source over Daily Wire, Tomi Lahren, polarizing people.
That's pretty blatant. Basically asking Facebook to rig the game in favor of certain news outlets over others.
It certainly reads that way. It shows a clear desire to shape the discourse, to elevate government-approved voices.
And it got even more specific, didn't it? Down to individual posts.
Oh, yeah. It gets almost absurd. The White House demanded Facebook take down a meme, a humorous meme, that was discouraging vaccines. Apparently, it was the #3 most viewed post in the data Facebook shared with them.
So not misinformation, not incitement, just humor they didn't like.
Exactly. Crushing satire because it didn't fit the narrative. And maybe even more troubling for you listening.
Go on.
There is documentation showing the Surgeon General's office wanted Facebook to remove, and get this, true information about side effects from vaccines.
True information. Why?
If the user didn't provide, quote, complete context. So basically, censor facts if those facts might make someone hesitate about the vaccine, even if the facts themselves were accurate.
That's quite something. Controlling the narrative by omitting inconvenient truths.
It seems that way. And this all kind of boiled over in the summer of 2021. The pressure reached its peak.
That's when President Biden publicly said Facebook was, quote, killing people.
That's the moment, July 2021. And understandably, that caused a huge internal reaction at Facebook.
I bet. What do the internal messages say?
Leadership texts called the White House's behavior highly cynical and dishonest. They felt the administration was just scapegoating Facebook.
Scapegoating them for what?
To cover their own missed vaccination rates, is what the texts suggest. So internally, they knew they were being pressured, unfairly used politically.
But they still caved.
Ultimately, yes. And this is where that disinformation dozen claim comes in. The administration pushed this idea hard that just 12 people were behind, 65% of anti-vaccine content?
Right. I remember hearing that figure everywhere.
Well, Facebook's internal data, when they actually looked at views, not just posts, showed those 12 accounts were responsible for only about 0.05% of vaccine-related content views. Tiny.
0.05%, not 65.
Correct. So the narrative used for pressure, it was just fundamentally flawed based on their own internal metrics, but it worked.
So why give in then if they knew the justification was shaky?
The internal logic laid out in the documents was pretty stark. They decided they had, quote, bigger fish to fry with the administration. Things like regulations, data flows, basically their core business interests. So they made a choice. Appease the White House, be more aggressive against COVID and vaccine misinformation, even if it meant compromising on principles. Commercial stability trumped free expression.
A tough calculation. And that pressure then moved on to other platforms.
Yeah, the campaign expanded. If Facebook could be pressured, why not YouTube?
So what happened with YouTube? Same story?
Pretty much the same playbook. The White House specifically pressed YouTube on controlling borderline content.
Yeah.
That speech that did not actually violate YouTube's existing policies.
So pushing the boundaries of their own rules.
Exactly. And internal YouTube emails show they were worried, really worried. Someone wrote about the situation potentially spiraling out of control. They felt they needed to appease the White House.
Appease them why? Same reasons as Facebook.
Seems so. The emails mention YouTube wanting to work closely with this administration on multiple policy fronts. Again, broader business and regulatory concerns were clearly in play. The risk of fighting the administration seemed too high.
And did YouTube also sort of collaborate on policy?
This is maybe the most smoking gun piece of evidence. September 2021, YouTube's trust and safety team literally sent the White House a draft of a new censorship policy proposal.
They sent a draft policy to the White House for approval.
Essentially, yes. It was designed to remove content about vaccine safety and efficacy, and they explicitly asked the White House for their feedback before finalizing it.
Wow. So government pre-clearance of private censorship rules.
Pretty much. And how did the White House react? Flaherty apparently praised it as a great step.
Unbelievable. Okay, so Facebook, YouTube.
Right.
Did it stop there?
No. And this shows the breadth of the ambition, really. The pressure campaign extended beyond social media right into online retail, specifically targeting Amazon.
Amazon.
The bookstore.
The world's largest online bookstore, yes. Which demonstrates the goal wasn't just about viral videos. It was about suppressing disfavored ideas, even in book form.
Who contacted Amazon? Same people. This time it was Andy Slavitt, the senior advisor. In March 2021, he contacted Amazon complaining about, quote, high levels of propaganda and misinformation in their book section. He specifically mentioned that search results for vaccines were concerning.
Concerning to the White House, presumably. And how did Amazon respond?
Immediately. Internal documents state they initiated a new policy specifically because of this criticism from the Biden people. They rushed it through.
What did the policy do?
This is where it gets particularly alarming. They started categorizing certain anti-vaccine books, or books questioning vaccines, into a do not promote class DNP.
Okay. What's the significance of that class?
That DNP classification, according to Amazon's own internal notes, was originally intended only for content identified by NSOC to contain extremist content.
Wait, so they put books questioning vaccines in the same category as actual extremist material?
That's what the documents indicate, yes. Forced into that classification to appease the White House. And the scale was significant. Amazon noted they eventually removed or suppressed over 20,000 books related to their COVID policies.
20,000 books, after claiming they usually had a high bar for removing book selection.
Exactly. That high bar seemed to vanish pretty quickly under government pressure.
So, putting it all together, this constant pressure, these demands, the threats, it created a real chilling effect, didn't it?
Absolutely. Platforms started censoring more than maybe even the White House explicitly asked for, just to be safe. We already mentioned Facebook admitting they censored the lab leak theory early on, partly because they just weren't sure what the White House wanted censored. So better safe than sorry. Over-censorship becomes the default.
And is there a sense of the mindset behind this? Why push so hard against, well, free speech principles?
Well, one revealing insight comes from Andy Slavitt's own book, actually. He wrote, criticizing what he saw as our obsession with individual liberties, even at the expense of others' lives and health.
That's a fairly clear statement of priorities, isn't it?
It suggests a mindset within parts of the administrative state, at least during that crisis, that the First Amendment was maybe, a secondary concern, an obstacle even, to achieving public health goals as they defined them.
And this wasn't just a COVID-specific thing, right? Did this cooperation, this pressure, continue on other topics?
That's the long-term danger highlighted in the sources. It quickly expanded. By 2022, the same channels of communication and pressure were being used for things like alleged Russian misinformation and voter information initiatives.
So once you establish that pipeline,
it gets used for an ever-growing list of topics, as the source material puts it. The government finds a lever to influence private censorship, and it tends to keep pulling it for more and more issues.
And legally speaking, just to be clear, where does this stand?
The core legal principle, as the sources reiterate, is pretty straightforward. Absent some incredibly compelling state interest, the government just cannot tell private companies how to moderate content. The actions documented here, the threats about antitrust, about Section 230, are described as coercive, not collaborative in a legal sense. They actually violated the platform's own First Amendment rights against compelled speech or government interference.
Okay, so let's try to wrap this up for everyone listening. What are the main takeaways from this deep dive into the files?
I'd say three main things stand out. First, the Biden administration systematically used coercion, that's jawboning, and threats to force major tech companies, Facebook, YouTube, Amazon, to change their content policies.
Right, coercion, not suggestion.
Second, the censorship wasn't just targeting, say, dangerous misinformation. It went after politically inconvenient content, conservative voices specifically named, simple humor, and even critically factual information about vaccine side effects if it didn't fit the preferred narrative.
And third,
the platforms.
Yeah.
They caved. Despite internal misgivings, despite knowing some of the government's claims were flawed, they ultimately prioritized commercial stability, appeasing the administration over defending free expression principles.
So why does this matter so much to you, listening right now?
Well, because what these documents seem to show is a significant effort by unelected officials, by political operatives, to basically manipulate the public conversation, to suppress dissent and control the flow of information you see online and even in books. It's a profound challenge to the idea of open debate.
And where do things stand now? The source material mentions some officials involved have moved on, but there's action in Congress.
That's right. House Republicans are working on legislation bills like the Free Speech Protection Act, the Censorship Accountability Act, trying to prevent this kind of government-driven censorship complex from operating, or at least make it more transparent and accountable.
Which brings us to, I guess, the final, maybe unsettling thought to leave people with.
Yeah. The sources kind of pose this question. If the private sector, these huge, powerful tech companies, can't or simply won't stand up to government coercion when fundamental rights like free speech are on the line,
Then what?
Then how long is it until the power to effectively silence political opposition or inconvenient truths gets formally baked into the system? Maybe
Yeah.
through law, maybe just through accepted practice, making this kind of administrative overreach a permanent feature no matter which party is in charge.
Something definitely worth thinking about next time you're scrolling through your feed or browsing for a book online.